So welcome everyone, and like I mentioned, I'm happy to have everyone here. Today, we would complete our implementation from last class, and then we would end the lecture there. Tomorrow, our class will be focused on open source contribution, and that would literally be what we would be doing tomorrow, and it will serve as the end of our lecture for this program. Uh, the truth is, we were not able to cover every single thing due to the time, but you can always continue learning, and that's the beautiful thing. But one important thing we were able to do is to cover the fundamentals. So we've covered the fundamentals. At the end of this program right now, everyone on this call should be able to write a basic Rust program, and everyone should be able to write a simple Soroban program. So from there, you can literally keep building and building. Now, the assignment I gave to everyone would serve as an indication of your participation, and to show that you have actually gone through the work of learning Soroban and becoming a Soroban developer. So welcome once more, everyone. I would start by sharing my screen and would literally continue from where we stopped yesterday for the implementation of the crowdfunding. But before I proceed, is there anyone on this call that has probably a question on their own implementation and all of that? Is there anyone with any question? You can use the raise hand button to ask. Anyone? You can use the raise hand button to ask if there's any question based on the assignment I have given and probably did not understand a part or you were getting a problem while writing the code. Now is the time to ask the question. So, since there are no questions to ask, we will just proceed. Okay. So here are a list of what we said we were going to test yesterday. We're going to test if the contract initialized properly. We're also going to test if the create campaign was successful. Next, we said we were going to test for invalid goals and then test if the contribution was successful and on and on. So that's what we are going to start with. So the very first test we would be having is to test for initialization. We're going to write the test and then we would say test what? Initialization. Test initialization. And then, so we're going to call the setup env that we created. You remember it's an helper function for our test. We're going to get the env, we're going to destructure it, get the env. What else do we need? We need the client too. So we say it's equal to what? Setup. And so with this, we've gotten both the env and the client. So we're going to create our token. We would say token equals address generates, and we pass in the env. Env, that's the environment, and yeah, we have the address. So we're going to assert something. What are we going to assert? We're going to assert that the client initialization was actually completed. So we're going to say client dot initialize, pass in the token, and then it should return nothing. So we're going to cargo test. So it's going to take a while because it's actually building. And once it's done, it's basically would give us the test results. Yeah. Okay, while it is building, let's continue writing our test. So this is the first test initialization. Okay. So what's the next test? We want to test campaign. So we are going to write a test to check for campaign, whether the campaign was successful. We're going to write tests, create what? Campaign success. So we're also going to the structure again. We need the creator this time actually. Then we also need the client. And then the setup. So we need the campaign creator. Let's say we are trying to reach a goal of 1,000. Okay. Then let's say we have a deadline. Let's say the deadline is let's add 500 to the timestamp. So let's get it env.ledger dot what? Dot timestamp. So let's add 500 to the timestamp. So then for the campaign, let's create the campaign. So we say let campaign ID equals what? Client dot create what? Campaign. And so we're going to pass in to create the campaign, as you can see here. Let me close this. As you can see here, let's open it. Let's open all of this. We need to pass in the creator address, the goal, and the deadline. So we've created the goal, we've created the deadline, we've taken the creator address. So we close this. So for this, what do we have here? We have this. So let's add this here. Okay. So notice that the test we ran actually passed successfully. So that was the first one. It's passed. The test initialization, it's passed well. So our initialization works well. Now, the next test we're going to run would make it 2, this second one. But we are not done with the test. So let's just continue. So we have the campaign ID created after we called the create campaign, which should be returned here as the campaign ID. Then the next thing we have here then is the campaign itself. So let's try to get the campaign. Let's try to get the campaign. So to get the campaign, we're going to say client dot what? Dot get campaign. Let's just get campaign details. And then we're going to pass in what? The campaign ID. This campaign ID that we got from creating the campaign, we're going to pass it in. And then we're going to check if the campaign was successfully created. The first thing we are going to check is the campaign creator. So we're going to check the campaign dot creator should be what? Equal to the creator that we passed in. 1. Second, let's use assert equal. Secondly, the campaign dot goal should also what? Be equal to the goal of the campaign. Thirdly, the campaign deadline should also be what? Equal to the deadline we created here. And lastly, the amount raised for now should be zero since no one has raised any amount. So campaign dot amount raised. No, it is raised. It should be what? It should be equal to zero. So let's run our test. So we can go run, can go test now, and let's see. This time it's failing. Why is it failing? Now let's see. Let's see why it's failing. Initialization complete. Okay. It said the data escalated error to what? To panic. So at what point was it panicking? So let's go back. Now let's check out, let's try to check out the campaigns one by one. And let's see. Okay. So definitely this happened when we were creating what? The campaign. So let's try to create the campaign and let's see. Okay, definitely it was when we were creating the campaign. It happened, right? Good. So this is where our problem is coming from. So what exactly is happening when we were creating our campaign that is making this an issue for us? So let's try to debug it. Now let's go back to our errors and it says host error authentication invalid action. So we were calling the creator, yeah, and then, so let's say we did not call the creator for this, and then we ran it, okay? This leads to what Intiro was talking about yesterday, was asking about yesterday, the creator. If we did not add the authorization to it, what happens? I'm sure we can now see it from our test. We can now see it from our test that the creator is not authorized. And so why then did we add it to our code? So at least anybody should be able to create a campaign. There should be no authorization. And so we added it to our code. And that was actually a major problem, actually. That was a major problem. So the check we are meant to add is to check that the person calling this method, claim fund, is the one that created it. So that's what we are meant to check. And we are going to reorganize all of that later from our code. But before I proceed, I really want to ask us, okay, let's go back to our test. So if we check out all of this now, if you uncomment all of this and we run our test, it should basically work. Our test should basically work perfectly because everything has been set perfectly. The creator and the goal, the deadline, everything has been set perfectly. But because of this authorization we added to the create campaign, which will definitely affect this contribute too, because everyone should also be able to contribute. And that was what Intiro was pointing out from yesterday. But before I even proceed, I really want to ask us all, based on our own progress on this implementation, is there anybody that has completed his own implementation or any of the implementations? I want to hear comments, especially from those that have written Solidity smart contract and also writing, the Soroban smart contract. I want to hear experience on the comparison, like comparing both smart contracts together. So is there anyone? Cynthia, Dennis. Okay, I got a message from Cynthia that she would finish out on Monday. Jani, Miriam, Matutun, Intiro. Anyone before we proceed quickly, because I really want us to complete all of the tests for this smart contract. Anyone, I'd like to hear comment from at least someone. Or are we saying no one has even tried to, you know, do the assignment? Anyone? Okay, okay. So apart from interior, are we saying really no one has started the assignment? Okay, okay, okay. Are we really saying that no one has started the assignment? I'm not happy with this. Oh. Dennis, this assignment, are we saying no one have done anyone from it? Okay, Dennis, let me hear from you, please. Uh, yeah, let me hear from you, please.
Okay, I did the initial assignment, this one now that you've just covered, but I didn't implement that many features as you.
Sorry,
For
I didn't
the
get what you said.
I did the assignment, but I did not implement so much features as you've done. But for the rest of them, the time lock, the DAO
Okay.
voting system, I'm yet to do, but I will definitely do. Yeah,
Okay.
unless you are asking for a comment about Soroban comparison with Solidity.
Yes, I wanted to know your experience with the comparison. So how
Oh,
was it? Was it easier? Was it better? How was it?
definitely, I've not seen anything in Soroban that is unsurmountable,
That is what?
that's not manageable. It's just that being new to it, you have to take your time with it first, get used. It's just like the learning curve with Solidity. Initially, it was kind of challenging, then it got smooth. But my overall views as of right now is that Solidity is easier to read. I can skim with Solidity with my eyes and get the general sense of what the contract is trying to do. Definitely, I can do that with Soroban, but after I've gained some experience.
Okay, 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 okay. Great, 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 great. I'm happy with that response at least. At least I got a response. That means that at least someone tried it. And yes, 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 yes. Okay. So we'll just proceed. We'll just proceed. And we'll come back to this authorization. I'm going to implement a different type of authorization to it. But let's just continue with our test for now. So we have the test, and for it, what's the next function we mentioned we want to test? Invalid goals. So for goals that are not valid, let's try to pass in goals that is not possible, that are invalid. What then should happen? That's what this next test is literally going to test for us. So it should test for invalid goals. So for that invalid code, I think we add uh something here for invalid code. Goals must be positive. So let's try to get that for the we are still under um create campaign success. Okay, so yeah, this is what we are trying to test for. This is what we are trying to test for. So for that, we definitely should have a should panic, yeah, and so it should be should panic. And what are we expecting it to give? So we're expecting it expected um goal must be reached, must be positive, I guess, must be positive. So yeah. Then the next thing is we write the main function itself. So we're going to test create what? Create campaign, invalid goal. So I'm going to also destructure this as usual. And we have the creator, we have the client, and then we have the setup. Okay, so we need the creator and the client here. So we're going to say let goal equals 0. Remember, we said here that goal must be greater than 0. But now let's make the goal equals 0. So we are testing for someone that is trying to make its goal 0. What then should happen in this case? So then for the deadline, we could have, see what we did for deadline here. We added more time to the ledger timestamp here. Instead, what we're going to do here for the deadline, we're just going to use 10,000. Just going to use any number. Then we are going to call client dot create what? Create campaign. Going to pass in the creator, the goal, which should be a reference. Then the deadline too. We're going to pass it in. And then if we run this test, it should pass because we were expecting what? An error. And so this is the error. Now imagine we did not add this should panic here. What happens when we call this? It panics and it tells us field test. Why? Because it's panicked. The goals must be reached. So we can say that our code is working perfectly. So this assert is perfectly working. I'll get back to this one I commented out. Now, the next one from our test is we said we want to test if the contribution is successful. So if a person is able to successfully contribute, so let's try that out. Contribute. Okay. Okay. So we're going to test for contribute success. We're going to add a test here. And then we're going to test contribute success. And going to destructure this. We get the env, we get the creator, we get the contributor, we get the client, and then setup. We call this setup.env, and no, this isn't an arrow. This is equal to. Then we get the goal. Say the goal is equal to 2,000. Let's see if we're trying to reach $2,000 contribution. And then our deadline, let's make it the same thing as what we did initially. So it's going to be env.ledger dot what dot timestamp dot what dot 500. How's it? Let's add plus 500. Oh, let's add plus 1,000. So the timestamp. Okay, Johnny. Okay, okay, okay. And Intiro asks if the assignments are being done as a group. No, it's an individual one. It's an individual one. Everyone should do the assignment individually. It's to help you personally, to be very honest. So we're going to have the campaign ID. So we say campaign ID. No, let's this be smaller. Campaign. Wow. Campaign ID. Say is equal to what? Client dot create what? Create campaign. And we're going to pass in the goal and the deadline. And then we're going to say client dot what? Contribute. And so we're going to, this is how much we want to contribute. This is the contributor. We're passing it in. For client.contribute, we are passing in the contributor, we are passing in the campaign ID and the amount we want to contribute. So let's say we're trying to contribute 500. Let's pass in 500. Let's say that's how much you're trying to contribute. So for that, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to have the amount raised. We're going to check the amount raised. So yeah. Okay, we're going to check the amount raised. To check the amount raised. So we have to contribute as start. That's what? Start equal what? Client dot get campaign detail. Then we're going to pass in the campaign ID. And then here we have it. So this shouldn't be here. Okay, this are not that. So we're going to get the campaign ID. Or let's just, you know what? Let's just create it separately. Let's just create it separately. Let's just say the campaign. Let's get the campaign separately. Let's get the campaign separately. And so we'll just have it here. Let's get the campaign separately. Uh, yeah, let's have it here. And then, yeah, we're going to check the campaign dot raised. We're going to check it to 500. We're going to check if it's equal to 500. So here's the moment of truth. Now, this thing is going to fail. Yes, it failed. Can someone tell me why this failed? Can someone tell me why this failed? There's a reason why this failed. Can someone raise the hand and explain to me why this failed? Notice that we are no longer using the require auth. That's a problem we are going to deal with later. But then everything we did here was going smooth. But then it eventually still failed. Why did it fail? Dennis, your hands were up, Dennis. You can unmute. Dennis?
Sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hand. I don't know.
Oh. So does anyone know why this actually failed?
Can we see it again?
Okay. Yeah. Now, the reason why it failed is something very interesting that I did not do right from the beginning, which is like a very big thing. but I never did it. I just assumed one way or the other, someone will notice it and just make mention of it because it's something it's more like I could say I was intentionally um um writing and waiting for an error in my test. Now, obviously, this error is definitely not coming from the code itself, that is the main implementation. Rather, the error is coming from the test itself. The test is where the error is coming from. So what exactly could that be? Notice, what have we done wrong? This is the test. This is what we are trying to test. This contributes. Create campaign was created successfully, but then contribute is not working well. So why? Anyone?
Does it have anything to do with the campaign not being active?
The campaign is active. We never do we have any. No, the campaign is active. I mean, remember we've not dealt with any time warping here. Notice we only set the deadline here. We didn't deal with anything like time warp or changing of time. We didn't deal with any of that. It's a glaring the problem is a glaring problem here. We are literally seeing the problem and we just did a quick, but we know it's a very wrong approach that would never ever work.
What about the token itself?
Exactly. That is the problem. Look at the beginning here. When we were trying to create the token, see what we did here. We generated a random we generated a random address and we assumed that address would be the token address. How does that work? That doesn't work. Why? This is because, first of all, the token address is different from what? Is different from a normal EOA. The token address, we have to what? We have to what? Implement it. And so we have to create it. And that's exactly what we are going to do. Now, we are going to go back to this authorization. Now, for this authorization, so now we have two things we want to do. We go back to this authorization, and then we will do something here in our test for here. So what we are going to do here is we are going to mock all authorizations. So we are going to say, okay, we have our env here. So we're going to say env dot mock all authorizations, all auths. So it's going to mock it, and I'm going to comment this one here, and then I'm going to run this. And we're going to see the test would pass perfectly. Okay, it's failed. Where? Here. That's because we didn't mock the authorization here. So we're going to mock the authorization here. So we're going to use env.mock all authorizations here. And we're going to add the authorization here. Yeah. So we're going to have this saved. Oh no. So we're going to now 3 passed, 1 failed. So which one is the one failing? Which one is the one failing? Create campaign, invalid goal. Create campaign. Okay, yeah, we never added the mock authorization yet. So we're going to add that here. So that's the solution. So that's the first. Okay, we never add our ENV here. Let's have it here. Okay. So we're going to run this now. And yeah. So now we've been able to deal with this require auth. That's our first problem. We've been able to deal with it. Now we are going to mock all the authorization we need. Great. Now the second problem we had was the problem of the token. So we are trying to use an EOA for a contract address. Where does that work? Where does that work? So what are we meant to do? We are meant to actually create a token. We are meant to what? Create a token. So I'm going to show us how we can create a token here. So for this, I'm going to say use token. Now it's the same way. So we're going to use token as a client this time. So we're going to say use token as a client, as we're going to call it token client. Token client. Okay. This is one. Then the next one is also, we're going to get the token admin client. So we're going to say use token admin client as what? As let's say as token admin client. Why? Do we not we no longer have admin clients inside of token? So many things changing. Okay, since we no longer have admin client, let's just use token alone. Let's just use token alone. Let's just use token alone. Now, there might be situations whereby we might actually want to, let me import tokens here to do. So there might be situations whereby we might actually want to mimic what are they calling it? Mimic the native token, which is XLM in this case. So how do we do that? We also have to create that too. So for that one, we're going to say use Soroban SDK. We're going to import it through the SDK. And this time we're going to get XRD. And then inside of XRD, we're going to get the assets. And what else do we need? We need the contract ID, preimage, and then we also need the right XDR. Okay, so here are the things we need to create our token. So now, just like we created a function that would serve as a mock for this ENV, the same thing we have to do for our token. So let's create a function that would serve as our token. So let's do that. So we say function create what? Create token contract. Function create token contract. And it's actually going to be a lifetime. We're going to definitely deal with lifetime. So let's have ENV here and have it as ENV. And then we have admin, which would be an address, obviously. An address. Oh, I used comma here instead of colon. Okay, so what should this return to us? This should return our token client so we can interact with our token. So it should be our token client. So we should have token client, which is going to be a lifetime. We know why. Then we should have token admin client. Now, I really don't know why there's no longer token admin client, because we should definitely have the same way we have token client, we should have token admin client. Let me quickly see this. Token client, Control F, admin. Okay, okay. Let's just return the token. Let's just return the token client. Let's just return the token client. Let's leave the admin alone. We would see what to use as we proceed. Let's leave the admin alone. So many things literally changing. So here we have, let's leave this alone. And so,
So, sorry,
yeah, I'm listening.
the admin would usually be like have the powers of an admin in like an ERC20 that can
Yeah,
allocate like a spender and any.
yes, something
Okay.
like that. I'm trying
Okay.
to see what changed here. What changed, because I'm trying to use the token admin, but I'm not able to import it. It usually use token, and then under the token we should have the token admin or something like that. But here we have only the client, the interface, the Stellar Asset Client. Now, this asset client would involve the address, the authorizations. Okay, let's just remove all of this. Let's just remove all of this. Let's see how it goes. And when we get to that bridge, we will definitely cross it. So what then do we have here? So for this, we have let's create the contract address. Contract address, which is equal to e.register. Oh, we have env. I've been using e here so often. I got this. I should even use e so I don't forget. I should use e. I've been using e. So say e.register stellar assets contracts. So this is what we'll be using. Register stellar assets contract. Now it is V2. It's usually before was register stellar assets contract. Now it is now changed to V2. If I remove it and add stellar assets contracts here, you'll see what is written deprecated. This is deprecated. So a whole lot of things changing. You just have to move up and catch up. Then we should have our admin. Let's clone that. Admin.clone. And then we should have this. Okay. So that's this. Let's assume this is the stellar asset contract. And then the next thing we want to do is the token client. You know what? In fact, let's return both the contract address and the token client. So let's return both of them here. Token client, and let's return first the contract address. So what's this type like? Yeah. So let's try to see if we can return that. Also, yeah, let's fix it. Okay. So both the Stellar Assets contract and the token client, let's return both of them. Then the next thing we want to do is to create the client. So to create this client, we're going to say token client and new. And then so we have to pass the env. This time it's E, right? Change it from env. And then the address in this case should definitely be the contract address we've created here. Yeah, this one. So it's going to be the contract address. Okay. So it's saying it expects Soroban address, but we are passing in the contract address. And now remember that inside of this Stellar contract address, we have access to what? The address. So we are then going to do what? Dot address. Dot address. And we are good to go. And so with this now, we can now have our tuple, return our tuple, the Stellar asset contract. So we can have the contract address dot address actually, and we can then also have the token client. This let's token client token client token client equals this. So you can have this and then pass in what? The token client. Yeah. Oh, I shouldn't have added the address to it. Okay. So now we have this here passed here. Okay, it really doesn't want the camel case. It prefers the snake case. And we have to change this one to the token client. Good. So we've been able to successfully create the token client. So the next thing we want to do now would be, is it possible for us, just for this testing, I mean, is it possible for us to also create the native asset contract address? Let's try that. Let's try that. Let's try that. So to do that, let's say, let's call this native what? Assets. Native asset contract. Address. And then we pass in E as ENV. Let's add the reference sign. And then this should definitely return an address, right? Yeah. So after it returns the address, so let's native equals what? Asset native. Then let's just add to do here so we don't get distracted with this compiler error. So then the next thing we want to do is we want to get the contract ID pre-image. And we already imported that here when we were talking about what we needed for creating the native token. We imported that here. So this example I'm doing is just to it's just as a code example of when you need this implementation. Now you notice that we could have just continued since we've created our token contract and just continue, but it's a situation whereby you need the native assets to test with. How do you do it? So I'm literally showing us how to do that right now. So for that, we are going to continue. So we will then we create the contract ID pre-image, contract ID pre-image, and for that, we'd use the pre-image we imported here, this contract ID pre-image. So for that, that would be contract pre-image, and we would get the assets. Under assets, we then pass in the native assets, passing the what? The native assets inside of it. And then the next thing we'll do then is we'll then create the bytes of this. Let bytes equals bytes, bytes, and we say from slide, okay, right from slide. And we have, is it ENV we have or E? E actually. And then for that, we are going to pass in the contract ID pre-image. What are the items? We pass in the reference of the contract ID pre-image, and we're going to change it to what? To XDR. To XDR, and who had any limit to it? Good. Then we will just then do what? We dot unwrap. We unwrap it. So let's go down here. It's asking for limits. That's the depth and the length of the pre-image. We didn't used to ask for the limit for this. So, let me see this. They used to ask for the depth and the limit for this. So many things change. It is missing. So let's check for limits. And yeah, limits. Let me open it and let's see. Let's say limits with the depth, and let's add 100, and then let's do the length. Let's say 32. Okay, so this is that. Then for this, we're going to have the native asset address, native asset address. And then from there, we're going to what? We're going to say from, we should have from contract ID, from contract ID. Do we still have the from contract ID? And then we're going to pass in the EMV. We are meant to also pass in the crypto SHA-256. So it should be, it should also be under it. So it's going to be dot crypto dot SHA-256, and then we should pass in the bytes that we've just created, the bytes, and we should be good. What's the problem? It says from contract ID is private. This function takes in two arguments, but one was supplied. Okay, let's check. Why is it private now? It's meant to, okay. So instead, it's rather taking in, I think we should use contract ID here instead. So let's use contract ID. Contract ID. So what's the problem again? Okay, contract ID is also private. So how then do we get our contracts? Our native assets address. How then do we get it? And these should return an address for us. So from the pre-image, well, so okay, let's come back to this, and where is it? Okay, yeah. This is now private. I wonder why they made this private now. I wonder why they made this private now. But it's public. Why is it saying it's private? Says contract ID is private method defined there, but it was made public. Yeah. I wonder why. But after doing that, you're meant to have the native assets returned to you, and that would have been the address, basically. This would have been the address. Unless there is a mistake we have done. And there's no mistake. But here is literally how to create the native address. So we're having some sort of errors, and in fact, it has taken over the time for our class. And so now that we already have our token, how do we now get our token? So we are going to create the token inside of, we can in fact call it here. We can in fact call it here and say, let, what do we have here? These two, the Stellar asset contract and the token client. So uh, let's say, let, um, where is it? Yeah, it is. Let's call this contract address. Now, it's not just the contract address, actually, and then also the token client. It's not just, this is not just the contract address, because inside of it, we can get both the contract address, where is it? Yeah. We can get the contract address and the Stellar asset issuer. So we can get the person who issued it. So, yeah. So for this, we say it's equal to create token contracts.
Yeah, I,
Yeah.
I'm really having issues with those two types that are being returned.
Okay.
In
These two
the
types, this
yeah
Stellar asset contract and token client.
yeah specifically like even the client. Well,
This client,
yeah, if you could try and like again make an analogy between this and Solidity and EVM, that would be
okay.
really helpful.
So
Thanks.
you can think of these clients as interfaces in Solidity. Now in Solidity, to interact with a contract, you can interact with that contract using the interface. Now, if for example, you want to interact with a contract um inside of your contract itself, you can use an interface to interact. Also, if you want to interact with a contract, let's say you wrote a script to interact with a contract, you can either interact it using the ABI or the interface. So you can think of this token client as that. So notice that even when we were writing our contract itself here, we have been using the token client here. Notice that. So the token client is what we have been using to interact with, but this case, the token client is specifically, you can think of it for ERC20 tokens. It's specified, if you can think of it for the token itself, not other contracts. It's more like an interface with all of the needed methods for the token. For example, you have allowance, you have approve, you have balance, you have transfer. All of these are literally inside of the interface, just like that. You have transfer from, just like you would have all of this inside of the interface of an Open Zeppelin ERC20 token contract. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
That's
Until,
perfect.
okay. So let's just call this year. Let's just call this year. Where is that? And then I know we've spent so much of our time, but I really want us to just add that, to just complete it. So we have the create token. We will then add in It takes in ENV. Do we have ENV here? Okay, we have ENV. It takes in ENV. It also takes in the admin address. So let's just have the creator address passed in. So creator. So yeah. So now we have both the contract address. So with this, we can have access to the contract address we are meant to interact with. So this is very, very, very wrong. We should comment this out. It shouldn't even be there. So we should have this even come up here. And so instead of this token here, we should have contract address dot what dot address here. Then for the token client, so yeah, we are going to also return, let's return the token address. So we're going to call that's the contract address. We're going to have here the contract address dot address. We're going to return it here. And we're also going to include the token client. Token client. We're going to return it here. So there will be an error, and that's because we didn't add that to all of this. And so what we've just done will definitely drastically affect everything we've written before. So for that, we're going to include it here, and then we'll have to start changing it everywhere. So we're going to include it here. So to include it here, we'll have to add this, the Stellar Asset contract and the token client here. So then we're going to include those here. And then that error is gone. Okay. Okay. Now this time we are no longer having the asset contract. This time we are having an address. If we are returning an address instead. Let's just return the address. And let's take away this if it's not going to be useful. So missing lifetime. Yeah, we made use of lifetime and that's why I added it. So okay. 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 So now let's come back here everywhere we needed it. And let's add this and this. And that should solve the issue. We come here, we add this, and this should solve the issue. Come here, we do the same, add this and this should solve the issue. Now, what I'm doing, I'm very sure I have probably confused so many based on what I'm doing. And I'm sure many people did not even get every single thing I'm doing, I did in this class. And for that reason, we should not even proceed at this point. So what I should do is I should create a new repository again for all of this and push it to that repository. So I actually created the repository. I did not know it was for the other class I was taking. So I'm going to create the repository for this and push everything I've been doing there so that everyone can go through it and even get a deeper understanding of what we have done. Because I'm very sure if I'm to ask that, do we all understand everything that went on in today's class? I'm sure the answer would definitely be no, unless I'm wrong. Dennis, do you have a full understanding of everything we've gone through, the merry-go-round and all of that? Dennis or Miriam? Yeah, Dennis, I noticed you're on mute.
Um, you're right, no, but
Okay.
I'll definitely go through it at my own time and get to a full understanding.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The time frame we had for this was not exactly what I had in mind. And so there's a whole lot to learn. There's a whole lot more to learn than this. But I tried to use this campaign as an example so we can deal with external interaction. We can deal with creating of the token asset clients. Then you can deal with, different data types and how to handle the errors. To be very honest, this feels like the fundamentals of all smart contracts. it feels like the fundamentals. If you can do interaction, you can do the next thing is just to after understanding this fundamental of interaction, understanding how data is stored, understanding how how to create a data structure in that particular smart contract. After gaining deep understanding of all of these things, then with more practice, you definitely eat some things that we've not discussed before. And just like while we were on this call, I literally saw some changes to some implementation I knew before, and I had to, adapt to it. I did not use the deprecated version, even if that was what I was used to. So we definitely eat things like that, and research will definitely help us all to, to keep learning and to keep updating our knowledge. So thank you very much, everyone. And this is how we've come to the end of today's class, basically. We've not been able to complete this test. There's high probability I'll just complete the test on my own and I would push it along. But if not, if we have the opportunity to complete it tomorrow's class, then that's also fine. But majorly tomorrow, what we want to focus on is open source contribution. How can we do that? That's basically what we want to focus on. So I'll stop sharing here and I'll hand over to IJ to continue. So thank you so much, everyone.